All right. Well, my name is Brianna Hansen, and I work for HRM Plus and School Data Solutions. And um, I'm here today to get you a little more familiar with the course request portion of the ProDev system. Right now, you're all muted, but my teaching style is very interactive, and you have permission to find the little unmute by your name and unmute yourself, ask questions. You know, webinars are kind of weird because we can't see each other. And I was telling Holly that I'm kind of a visual person and I take cues from my audience. And so when you're in a webinar, it really kind of makes it hard for someone who likes to look at their audience and make sure we're on the same page. So I don't take offense if you want to pipe in and ask a question. You also, there's a chat feature within the webinar. If you don't feel comfortable asking a question, feel free to type a question and I will pause and I will read your question and do my best to answer it at any time during the presentation. With that, let's get going, and let me start my little PowerPoint here. Let's go. All right, so I thought we'd use the PowerPoint tool rather than go to the site, just because when I try to go to the site, we always seem to have issues with the internet, and figured this might be a little more smooth and we'll have less issues. But we're going to go over course requests, and this is kind of where everything begins within the ProDev system. This is how you start the process. So it makes sense to start here. Okay. I look at the ProDev site, kind of there's a cycle, a process of how everything works. It begins with the course request, and you submit your request, your committee looks over it, makes sure it aligns with what the district wants to offer. It gets approved. Once it's approved, it's open for registration. It shows up on the course registration page, and then participants can go and register for that course. And after they register and the day comes for the course to start, the instructor would print a sign-in sheet, and then the participants would show up and they would sign in, and then the course would conclude, and attendance has to be verified sometime along the way, and sometime in there the course is evaluated. With these two items can happen not necessarily in this order. They might get evaluated before the course is actually verified, but they fit in there somehow in that order. And then after that is done, the last kind of piece in the cycle is credit is awarded. So that overall is kind of a glimpse of how professional development looks if you were to give it some sort of a visual. So before I move on, any kind of questions about that? Okay. All right. So within the system, if you have the role of instructor or facilitator, you will have access to a tab that's called Course Request. And on the Course Request screen, you will see a menu that looks like this. And this is where you'll go to, yes, you will have access to the PowerPoint. I'm going to give that to everybody when we're done. Thanks, John. That's a great question. You will see a listing, or you'll be able to, this is the course request menu, and on this screen, this is where you would go to add your course request. This will also be where you have a list of any courses that you have submitted. You will only see courses that you have submitted unless you're a PD manager. And then PD managers see every course that that's part of the system. And on this menu, there's a lot of different actions. And so the next slide's going to kind of go over all these little different, what the different search actions and everything before we actually go into how to add a course request. So we're going to kind of break down what every little thing means here. So obviously there's a button that gives you the ability to add a new course request. Throughout the system, you'll see these little I buttons, and they're information buttons. If you click on those, they're the detailed help menus. So if you ever click on that, you'll open it up. It's a little like menu or screen within the screen, and it gives you the detailed help functions. The little pencil icon, that is how you open an existing course request, and it lets you edit it. The PDF icon underneath the info column opens a little report, which is the course detail report. And if I click on that, this is what it would look like. And so here's an example of a course detail report. It kind of gives all the information of a course request, the title, category, start, end date. We put Google links to the address if there is one, start, stop times, all that good stuff. Okay. We go back. Oops, go the other way. Sorry. And then if you see this icon here, this gives you the ability to copy an existing course request. The one thing I always like to give caution to is when you're copying a course request, you want to make sure it's the same type of course. And we have multiple types of courses. And on your site, you're only using 2 of them, either a single session, which means you're meeting one time and it's done, or a multi-session where you're going to have one course, but you're going to meet over multiple times. So if you're going to copy a course, you want to make sure if it's going to be a single session, make sure it's a single session, or a multi-session, make sure it's a multi-session. If you see this little icon, it means that there's a wait list. So there's more people enrolled than there are seats. And if someone were to cancel their registration, then someone from the wait list would be moved into one of those available seats. Right now, if you click on that link or that button, it looks like it should be an icon. Nothing happens. It's just for information. And you actually have to go to the reports menu to get that information of who's on the wait list. But I'm working on having that fixed. And then under the registration column, there's another icon, a PDF icon that you can click on, and it gives you a listing of everybody who's registered for your course. And it breaks it down by session if it's a multi-session course. So here's my little sample. I have this class, and there was 2 people registered for each of the session. Or 3 people, sorry. I didn't see Donald kind of hiding in there. So that's kind of a breakdown of that screen. Within the course request grid, you also have the ability to do filtering. So as over time, if you add a lot of courses to your course request screen, you might want to quickly filter to find information. And you can do that by typing in the ID and search for it by number or title or location, start date, all of these things. I just like to point out that if you see this little funnel, you can actually click on that to change the option. So a lot of them default to begins with, but if you right click on that, you can change it to contains or doesn't contain and change your filter. And another really important thing that people don't pay attention to is when you have a filter, the quickest way to clear it is by looking for the little green arrow circle, and that will quickly clear and reset your screen. And sometimes we get filters stuck and we can't find stuff because we have a stuck filter. And if I click that, it clears it up real quick. Another thing to note is the courses have statuses, and this is a quick listing of the statuses. And when you get the PowerPoint, you can kind of spend a little more time going over the statuses, what they mean and everything. And then the different request types we talked about, single session, multi-session, and so on. And you guys aren't using this conference style. Okay, so now let's go on to the important part. How do we add a course request? Okay. When you go to add a course request, just take note that there's actually 7 screens that you have to complete. And that sounds like a lot, but really the first screen is the only one that requires thought. I mean, that's the hardest one. The others are real little detailed, or little with minor details included. You can copy an existing course request, like I said, but just make sure that it's the same type. And when you copy, really all you have to do is edit small things like maybe dates, anything that would be different. All right. So to add a new one, you're going to look for that add a course request button. And the first section is kind of that main meat. It's where you're going to put in your course description and you're going to put in your objectives. And I always like to have those things kind of thought of beforehand when I'm filling in my course request. You'll want to make sure that all the fields in red are completed because they're required. And you'll want to save that first page within 30 to 45 minutes because it's a live web-based page, and web-based pages tend to time out after a certain period of time. I think it's actually set to an hour, but I always tell people 30 to 40 minutes just to caution them so they don't panic, because I've known people who have spent a lot of time typing away, walk away, go grab lunch, come back, and then find that they've lost their work. So I don't want anybody that to happen to them. So I always say, you know, be prepared to save it soon so they don't lose your work, because there's nothing more frustrating than you've spent a long time writing up really wonderful objectives to lose them. The first time through, when you're creating a course request, you're going to see these little continue buttons at the bottom of the page, and you'll just keep going through to the last page until you hear press the submit button. Okay, and I'll kind of show you as we go along. Okay, so section 1 looks like this, and this is an actual screenshot from your site. You'll get to select like the type of course. So I picked multi-session here. Actually, I copied one. You're going to pick a category type, and you'll pick one that best fits the type of course you're offering. Then you'll pick the school year. Obviously, I picked an older one here. And then you're going to give your course a title. I always look at the title kind of as a quick advertisement of, or, you know, a title, not advertisement, but, you know, give a title that's clear of what your course is offering. Then you're going to select your location. Right now, lots of them are going to be online. It should default to the sponsor, which would be your district. I'm not sure what your funding code stands for. That's unique to your district. And maybe someone like Holly might want to unmute herself and speak to what that one stands for. If there's anything special people should know about the funding code.
Oh, yes. Actually, Bree, the funding code or account code is if attendees were going to be paid for taking the class, and this would be the account that they would be paid out of. Excellent. So even though it's in red, I don't believe you need to put anything in there.
Perfect. Perfect.
That makes sense. Okay.
And if we ever wanted to put some extra text, we could, just so you know, I could help you with that. Okay. Description is required because that's your advertisement. That gives people the details to let them know a little bit more about the course. Kind of like, well, what is this course about? Why would I want to take this course? And it's also one of those things when you look at the WACs and clock hour guidelines, it's one of those requirements that we need to add when we're offering a course for clock hours. So I always say, be thoughtful with your course description. Oops, I forget that I can't scroll up on here. You want to pick a course start date and a course end date. And then this registration closing date, people ask me, well, what does that mean? That date is the last day that course will show up on the course registration screen of the PD system. So that's the last date that someone can go to the course registration tab and see that course listed. So hopefully that's clear and that makes sense. Okay, so a lot of people, I like that it's the last day of the course. That's what a lot of districts do. That way, if someone forgets to sign up on that first day, they still have the opportunity to do that. It's really important to remember that in order to, give them the clock hours to transcribe them on their transcript, they have to sign in or electronically. They have to digitally register. Let me put that way. So we want to give them the opportunity to get their name on the list, even if they show up that first day and they're not on the list. When I would train people, I'd say, okay, you're here, sign the sign-in sheet, go get on that computer and register. Because if you want those clock hours, I need you in this class. So as a instructor, I'd always have that conversation with my participants if I didn't see them on my sign-in sheet when they show up. So something just to think about, because we can't verify their attendance if they're not in the class. Okay. Oops. Yeah. Sorry, my mouse is a little jumpy. Okay. Then the evaluation end date will auto-populate. We have it set up to do that for you. And you shouldn't have to worry about this ignore end date for evaluation. That's for kind of special circumstances. But you do want to select an evaluation form, and I believe you only have one. So just find your PD evaluation form from the dropdown. I'm working on the programmers making it have a default one that does that automatically, but it's not there yet. So for now, we still have to select one. And then there will be a default course approval that gets selected, but you can go through the list and pick one if there's a better one. By default, it always puts the current expected assignment or whatever it is. I should know it by heart, but I always say it slightly wrong. But if it's, if it's special ed or TPEP, you can change it. You always have that ability. Then you're going to pick the authorizing administrator. The course requester is going to default to whoever initiated the course request. But if you're creating it for someone else, you could change that. You can select a facilitator. A facilitator is optional. A facilitator is anybody that you want to give access to help with the course that's not necessarily the instructor. So oftentimes you'll have an instructor, maybe a building principal's an instructor, and you give a facilitator access to their building secretary because maybe that principal's right-hand assistant. They're real good at running off reports and just keeping them organized. I know that was my husband when he was a building principal. His secretary was real good about making sure the attendance was verified and printing off reports. So he would often make his secretary his facilitator. But they're not the instructor. They don't have to have the same requirements that OSPI doesn't require us to have the same level of we don't have to have the paperwork or the kind of the background on a facilitator like we do as an instructor when it comes to the rules around clock hours. You get to choose who your lead instructor is. So who's going to be instructing this course? And then that person, of course, would have to have the role of instructor within the system. And you'd select that from the drop-down. And then you would write your 3 objectives, because that's what OSPI likes us to do. That's one of our clock hour rules that we follow. And then our next little bit that's on that same first page, we have a couple other choices to choose. If this is one of our courses that we're offering to meet those para standards, you would check this little box, and then another little screen would open and you could tag which of the standards if you're doing any of the FCS courses and whatnot. If this is a STEM course, you would check this and another little screen would open and you could say, well, which of the, 2 of the 4 elements, is it, technology or mathematics and whatnot? And then you'd answer some questions. And if it's TPEP, which we don't have to track, but we still, some of us like to. And actually this menu, you can tell which TPEP it is. It's funny, it's there, but it doesn't view after you've selected it, but it is there. And then you guys are also tracking your principal directed hours. So if this is principal directed, you would check box and it would let us know that this qualifies. This also, if this is a repeat of something that's already been approved, you can check this box, then another screen opens, a little text box opens and you can answer a question. And then same with this one, if this is additional registration is required for this course, you can check this box and a little screen opens where you can enter a URL. So this is that first screen. This is the hardest part of adding a course request. Once you've completed this, you press continue. It saves your work and it assigns a course number to this screen. And if you needed to pause because you're tired, you could do that and your record would be here and you could come back at another time and continue, or you could continue now. The next screen's pretty simple. This is where we select our criteria that's associated with the course. And criteria serves two purposes. It allows participants to search for courses, and it allows the district to generate reports based around criteria. And this screen is really easy to complete. From each of the boxes in red, you have to select one item. If it doesn't apply to your course, you can pick not applicable. So for your course, if there's an intended audience, like who is this course geared for? It might be all staff. It might be a very select group. You can select an item from the drop-down box. You can select multiple items from the drop-down box. If you select something by mistake, once it's in this box below, you can just click on the item in the box and it'll disappear. Actually, I should be, and it'll go away. And you just do that for each item. You can, this bottom, the report criteria box at the bottom, you can actually ignore. That's not required. Usually kind of the PD managers control what gets selected for that or not. That's more like for the district to track courses for reporting. Right? Hopefully, I forgot to ask on the last slide if there was questions about that first slide too, so I better pause and do that because I'm getting ahead of myself. And if there's questions about this one. It does seem kind of daunting, but I promise it's not that hard. Once you do one, they become really easy. And you can always copy one and kind of just edit. Okay. The third section, you do have the ability to set limits on a course. And it limits who has the ability to register. No limits means anybody will see the course list. Well, everybody will see the course listed under course registration. And everybody will see the register button. If you add a limit to a course, everybody will see the course, but not everybody will see the register button. Only people that that match up with the limit that you've applied. So if you limit by location, the user will have to have that location in their personal information section of the system. And same with PD group. PD groups are defined by positions. They're linked up to positions and whatnot. So I don't know if you guys use the groups much or not, but they can get messy sometimes, but they can also be very useful. Right?
Can I just intercept here for just 1 second?
Yes.
I usually will suggest to leave this marked as no limits, because what happens is if somebody tries to register and they have this maybe limited to one school, and then there is maybe a specialist that works at more than that school, then they are not able to register.
Exactly.
And that happens a lot. That's usually the case, is that the registrants, are working in more than one location. So I usually just suggest to leave that as no limits.
That's
And then they could put that in the title. They could put, like
limited to,
Washington only or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
That's how I prefer, exactly how you do it.
Okay.
That's my prefer, because exactly that. Things aren't always neat and pretty, because
No.
we do have specialists that travel, and we have, and with way things are budgeted, things aren't all neat and pretty. In an ideal world, yes, limits are great. Some districts do use limits, but then they hand register their specialists with the invite register tool and add them to those. But that's a lot of extra work. So I don't like doing extra work. So use with caution. That's always my advice. And I like yours, just don't use them. But I point them out that they are there. Okay. Section 4. This is an important section. This is where you determine the number of credits and the type of credit you're offering, which for the most part should be clock hours. There's really very seldom a reason not to offer clock hours anymore, especially since last year when they changed the limit. It used to be we had to offer a course for 3 hours for it to qualify for clock hours. With now it being dropped down to 1, that makes it so much easier, I think. You could, in theory, offer a course for more than 1 credit type. But it gets messy really quick. So I caution districts to not do that. It's better to offer a course, even if you're having a class for both classified and certificated, it's better just to offer the class for clock. Classified teacher or classified employees don't really need clock hours, but it doesn't hurt them to take the class for clock hours. They just don't use them. They just attend. There's no rule saying they can't take a class for clock hours. That's what I usually tell districts, rather than try to manage 2 different credits in 1 class, just offer it for 1. But that is also up to the district. To add a clock hour, it's very simple. You're going to click your little add button, and you'll notice a theme. When it's time to add something, there's almost always an add button, and you'll click it, and this screen right here opens, and you're going to select your credit type, whether it be clock or non-clock, and then you're going to put the number of credits, or which equals the hours, and then you're the provider, and then we auto-populate. So what that means is when the user registers, they don't have to think. It just kind of does everything for them. We like that auto-populate. Less steps for the end user. And if you wanted to add a comment, you could, but there's really no need. And then you would save it. And that's all you have to do on this section. It's really simple. Questions about credits? And materials. This is an optional section. If you want to share materials with your participants that would live with the class so they could access them at any time, you can upload them here to the course request, and they're just going to be here forever. So, 2 years from now, the participant can still have access to these materials. But like I said, it's optional. It's not a requirement. It works really simply. You would first click on the browse button, and then it would take you to your computer, and you would browse your actual machine and find the file, and you would select it, and then you would press this upload material button, and then the file would show up here, and you could actually give it a description and all that fun stuff here. And if you decided you made a mistake for some reason, or you don't want them to have it anymore, you can press this lovely trash icon and the file will be removed. Simple as that. So, questions about materials? And then course links, same idea. I like this because I like to share a lot of Google Docs and things like that. You can add them on this screen or YouTube videos. you'll see kind of that same reoccurring theme. Press the add button. It'll open up a little screen where then you can just add your URL, give it a description, and save it. Yes, Elizabeth. I find there's no rules where that says a classified staff can take a course that says a classified staff can take clock hours classes. We can have a conversation about that if that would be better, Elizabeth. I'll tell you what Sherry has always talked to me about when it comes with clock hours and classified/cert staff. If that would be helpful, you and I could have kind of a conversation. So I'm reading a chat, sorry. This is hard when it's me and I don't have my partner in crime. Usually there's two of us when we're doing trainings. One manages chat and one the other does, but we can talk.
No,
yeah.
Thank you. That makes sense. I think I was taking notes and then we jumped to the other one. I was like, oh, I missed my question,
Okay.
but no, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll kind of follow up on that one, but yes. Okay. All right. Section 7. This is another kind of like, the first section where you're adding your course, kind of the meat of the course. Section 7 is another important section. This is where you're setting up your session details. If it's a single session course, you're going to only add one session. But if it's a multi-session course, you're going to need to add at least 2. But you'll need a session for every date that you plan on meeting. Okay? And one thing to note, when you pick your course type, so single session or multi-session, it changes the registration options slightly on the registration screen. So a single session course, your register button looks like this. It's just a single little register button with a plus. On a multi-session course, it begins with a register button with a down arrow. And when you press the register button, then it expands to show all the individual sessions that are available. And then you'll see either a register button or a register all. And the idea is that the participant can check just the sessions they want to register for, or they can go and register for all of them. Ideally, we usually want them to register all, but sometimes they don't. And that's just the way kind of the system knows single session is kind of a one track, one session. Multi-session, it's a track with multiple sessions within the track. So just kind of, that's why we have the different course types, and then they follow a different path. I don't know if that makes sense. I know it's hard to explain that, but that's the way it is. And I'm not being articulate, so I apologize. Okay. When you're adding a session, you'll see the little add button again, kind of our friend, our consistent theme kind of throughout the system. You'll click on that, and then you'll see a screen like this. The sequence will populate automatically. So you always see sequence 1, and then it'll say activity will be session 1, but you can change that. You can make it be whatever you want. You could give it an actual name if you want instead of session 1. And then you're going to, and the activity date usually is the start date of your course, but which on a single session, that's easy because it's going to be the same. Then you can come in here and you can change the start time and end time to whatever it needs to be to reflect the actual times you're going to meet. You can let your participants know exactly which room you're going to meet in because you told them the location on the first page on tab 1 of the course request. Now you're giving them the more detail. Which room are you meeting at that location? And then this is where you set your available seats. You can skip minimum enrollment if you need to. We added this. We had one district that had bargaining put in their CBA that if their minimum enrollment wasn't 5, they could cancel the course. So that's why there's a minimum enrollment screen option, because they could put in 5 and then they could set their seats. And if they didn't meet 5, they could cancel the course without getting in trouble. So that's, people always ask, well, why is that there? So that's the reason why. If that doesn't apply to you, you can just put 0 and not worry about it. When you first create a course, your seats available and your seats remaining should be the same. And then you shouldn't have to worry about ever coming to this screen again to adjust the seats. If you need to adjust the seats after you've created the course, you do that under course utilities. And it's really, really confusing to people because they think they should be able to come back here and make adjustments to the seats. But the reason you don't come back here is when we register, there's emails that go out and we have all these little things that go on behind the scenes. And if we use the course utilities, the utilities can then trigger those emails and all that special behind the scenes magic, where here nothing happens. So that's why we encourage people to use the course utilities. If you have comments that you want to share that are specific to this session, you can add them here and they'll be included on the little report for participants to see. The lead instructor that was selected on page 1 will populate here, but you'll also get to select additional instructors if you'd like. So if you have other people that are going to help instruct, you can select them as well. So you can have other people that will have access to this course, that'll be able to run reports, verify attendance, all of that good stuff. And then you'll save it. If you have multiple sessions, you'll want to do this for each session. The nice thing is if you have a multiple session course and say it's going to be in the same room and it's going to be really similar, you can just copy it and then maybe change the date. Because maybe it's going to be the same time of day. Everything's going to be the same except for the actual date. You can copy it. It's going to automatically change the sequence to 2, I believe. You might have to change the session around or whatever, but that saves a little time. Okay. Then, oh, there's my little warning about seat counts. Never change seat counts. Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest for the seat count and well, I guess the seat count is to avoid having a wait list. I suggest to make that seat count larger than what you actually expect the seat count to be, unless you're limited to a certain amount of attendees. If you're just opening up a course for, say, like the whole district,
Yes.
and you put the seat count at like what you think it might be, like 25, and then it ends up being 40, then the wait list happens and it creates havoc a bit.
It does.
So I would just recommend making it large as you think there'll be, and then add some, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I always pad my numbers. Dream big.
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
It's like when
That's
I plan
right.
for a party, like when I'm cooking for like a dinner party, it's like, I know that probably only 12 people are going to show up, but I'm going to cook for 20 anyway. That's kind of how I set my seat counts for courses. It's like realistically, 10 people are going to show up, but I'm going to set it for 20 because it doesn't hurt to have too many seats. I'll tell you what happens. Sometimes seat counts get off, and here's why. If you have a bunch of people register at the exact same time, it can confuse the system and it'll bump the seat off by one person, one count. If they register at the exact moment in time, it doesn't happen very often, but one seat gets off. But if you have a course where you have like 300 people registering, so one person and it bumps it off by 1, and then that happens again. And well, then now your count's off, and that happens like 4 or 5 times. Now your count's off by 5. And just those little tiny things kind of add up and they cause problems. We tried, when I can identify those, we get those fixed, but just sometimes you have little weird glitchy things, a server. It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, and then I try to fix them. I do adjustments and stuff, but you know, it's not a perfect thing. Or we have sometimes we'll have courses where people are constantly registering, unregistering, and it's all this back and forth, and the seat count gets off by 1 or 2, and that causes havoc and it frustrates people. So it's not perfect, just as best, you know. So we try, but it just, you know, I don't know. We work on it, but we can fix anything. If you have, and I can show you how to fix seat counts, but ultimately, if you notice your seat counts off, or if you have a wait list, you can email support and we will fix it for you. We give you tools to do it, but sometimes people don't even want to mess with it. If you email support and just say, course number such and such, the seat count's off, will you fix it for me? And we can usually fix it in just a few seconds for you. And you don't even have to bother and worry about it, just because some people, it makes them nervous. So just know that you can always email support@schooldata.net and we'll just take care of it for you, because we don't want you to have to worry. Okay, so after you've added your seats, your sessions, that's it. You're done. Your course is done. You're going to see this screen come up. Submit request. You're going to press this lovely button, and what's going to happen next is an email is going to be sent to the PD department, letting them know that you've submitted a course request. And after they review it, you'll get an email back letting you know if it's been approved or not. If it's approved, the course is open for registration, and people can start registering for your course. It's that simple. Oh yeah, see, after they determine if it's approved or not, all that goes. I forgot I made this screen. If it's denied, the status changes to denied, and you get a little email letting them know, and there'll usually be a reason why it might be, you know, kind of thing. Well, it won't tell you why, but it'll give you some generic reason why things get denied. And that's that. And then a couple things that I like to point out, that participants can only be registered for a course when a course is open. And this includes using the invite, register, cancel tool. And courses with the status of complete only show up in the drop-down list under the post courses menu. Courses with the status of complete and post will show up for your transcript, and courses with the status of posted will only show up for courses to select for under records by reports. Oh yeah, so there's different statuses of the course for depending on which report people want to run. I don't know what that slide might be, shouldn't be there, sorry. Oh, and evaluations. Oh, this is the one I want to talk about. Evaluations. People get confused about when people can do their evaluations or not. It's important to know that the evaluation is not tied to the course status at all. So you can go in, you can grade the status and verify it and everything, and people can still do the evaluation even if it says the course status is complete. The only thing you don't want to do is post the course in the post-course utility until the evaluation window is closed. But evaluations, they can still do them even if the grades or grades in are complete. That doesn't affect evaluations at all. It's not tied to status, only due date. But that is course request. Questions, and hopefully I didn't confuse you. I think that's it. Yep, that's it. I will send you this PowerPoint, and I have some written directions that I will also send out to everybody, probably by tomorrow, just so I can get the video cleaned up and put in YouTube so you can have that as well. And thank you for being a very nice audience, and hopefully it wasn't too confusing. And thank you very much. And that's kind of all I have for this time. All right. I'm going to turn off the recorder.